ketones creating low pH environment, ketoacidosis সেটা, that is different. That happens when insulin level is very low due to diabetic ketoacidosis or alcoholic ketoacidosis. এগুলো different. Ketosis is a physiological condition যেখানে ketones becoming the fuel for body. তাহলে তুমি যদি if you are not taking carbohydrate, brain and muscle, they will be bound to break down fat. The whole idea behind keto diet is that do not supply carbohydrate, the whole body will switch. So জিনিসটা that is equivalent to petrol কারের ইঞ্জিনটাকে ডিজেলে কনভার্ট করা, that is keto diet. Understood everybody? আমাদের নরমাল ডে টু ডে আমরা কি করছি, রাইস আর রুটি, এগুলো কি কার্ব। তো আমাদের ফুল বডি সিস্টেমটা গ্লুকোজ বেসড, গ্লাইকোজেন বেসড রয়েছে। যেই মোমেন্টে আমি এটাকে শিফট করব কিটোনের দিকে, জাস্ট কি করছি, পেট্রোল থেকে ডিজেলে কনভার্ট করে দিলাম গাড়িটাকে, গাড়ি চলবে। ক্লিয়ার? এবার দ্য মোর কিটোটিক ইট বিকামস, বডি যত কিটোটিক হচ্ছে ডেফিনেটলি দ্য ফ্যাট লস উইল বি এক্সপিডিয়েটেড। তুমি যখন ঘুমিয়েও আছো, ইভেন ইফ ইউ আর থিঙ্কিং, ব্রেনস ওয়ার্ক, দ্যাট ইজ অলসো থ্রু ফ্যাট। সো ওভারঅল ফ্যাট রিডাকশন খুব কুইক হয়। অ্যান্ড কিটো ডায়েট ইজ অলসো ইউজড ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্টলি, কিটো ডায়েট ইজ ইউজড ইন এপিলেপসি। এপিলেপসিতে কিছু ডায়েট আছে যার মধ্যে কিটো ডায়েট ইজ ওয়ান অপশন। কিছু কিছু পেশেন্টের ক্ষেত্রে উই প্রেফার কিটো ডায়েট ইন সাচ কেসেস। সো কিটো ডায়েট ইজ ওয়ান এরিয়া। সেকেন্ড এরিয়ার একটা কোশ্চেন আসে, athletes takes more carbs 24 to 48 hours or 2 to 3 days before any event. What is the reason? Question ashe, explain why. Athletes take more carbohydrate 2 to 3 days before an event. What is the reason? কি মনে হচ্ছে? কথাটা বুঝতে পারলে? অ্যাথলিটদের তো খাবারের প্রত্যেকটা কন্ট্রোল রয়েছে, তাই তো, প্রত্যেকটা খাবার, কিন্তু ডায়েটটাকে জাস্ট চেঞ্জ করা হচ্ছে, জাস্ট 2 to 3 days before they are taking more rice or more carbohydrate. What is the reason? জোরে বলো, জোরে বলো। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, তোমার you are a middle distance runner. বুধবার দিন, next Wednesday you have a competition, 5000 meter you have to run, you have a national level competition. Today is Saturday, today, tomorrow, Monday, you are taking a lot of rice, which is deviated from your usual diet. This is done, this is practiced. Why? What's the reason? Rice দিয়ে কি হবে আমার? এটা কোশ্চেন কিন্তু এটা ইউনিভার্সিটি কোশ্চেন বলছি, খুব প্রতিবার আসে না, এক আধবার দেখেছি আমি এই কোশ্চেন। রাইস দিয়ে কি হবে? রাইসটা কি? দ্যাটস দ্য আনসার, মাসল গ্লাইকোজেন স্টোরটা বেড়ে যাবে। সো মিডল ডিস্টেন্স আর লং ডিস্টেন্স রানার ফ্রি ফ্যাটি অ্যাসিডে হিট করার আগে ইফ আই হ্যাভ মোর অ্যামাউন্ট অফ গ্লাইকোজেন, ইট উইল হেল্প মি ফর 30 মিনিটস, 35 মিনিটস, 40 মিনিটস। কারণ ইন কেস অফ ম্যারাথন অক্সিজেনের প্রবলেম নয়, ম্যারাথন ইজ অ্যান অ্যারোবিক ইভেন্ট, প্রবলেম বিকামস টু ইয়োর এন্ডিউরেন্স। ক্লিয়ার? সো আমাদের এক্ষেত্রে যেটা করা হচ্ছে যে মাসল গ্লাইকোজেন স্টোরকে আমরা বাড়িয়ে দিচ্ছি। সো দিস এক্সট্রা কার্বোহাইড্রেট ইজ ডিউ টু ইনক্রিজ দি মাসল glycogen level or muscle glycogen storage. So this will provide extra energy during a middle distance or long distance event. Question for your examination. Keto diet can also be a question for examination. Ekhono asheni, in future it might come. Keto diet abar bole dicchi, it's a low carb or no carb, high fat, high protein diet. এক্সপ্লেন হইতে এভাবে কোশ্চেনটা ফ্রেম করতে পারে, হাই ফ্যাট ডায়েট ইজ ইউজড ইন ফ্যাট লস। ইটস আ প্যারাডক্সিক্যাল স্টেটমেন্ট। ইট ইজ পসিবল ইফ দ্য বডি ইজ বাউন্ড টু ইউজ ফ্যাট ইন আ স্টেট অফ কিটোসিস, তখনই এই জিনিসটা পসিবল। কিটো ডায়েট ইজ আ ভেরি কমন ডায়েটারি ওয়েজ টু রিডিউস ওভারঅল ফ্যাট লস। অ্যানাদার ওয়ে ডায়েটারি ওয়ে আছে, সেটা হচ্ছে লো কার্ব ডায়েট। এটাও প্রচন্ড প্র্যাকটিসড হয়, লো কার্ব ডায়েটটাও প্র্যাকটিস হয়, ওটাও তাই। ইট ইজ নট অ্যাজ অ্যাজ স্ট্রিক্ট অ্যাজ কিটো, বাট কার্বোহাইড্রেট কন্টেন্ট ইজ স্টিল লেস। কারণ কিটোতে অনেকের একটু সমস্যা হতে পারে ইনিশিয়ালি, একদম ফুল হাই ফ্যাট হাই ইয়েতে অনেকের কিছু কিছু সময় দেয়ার ইজ আ চান্স অফ স্লাইট চান্স অফ ডিহাইড্রেশন, দেয়ার ইজ আ থিওরিটিক্যাল চান্স অফ প্যানক্রিয়াটাইটিস, হাই ফ্যাট ডায়েট যদি লাগাতার বেশিতে চলতে থাকে, and there is some chance of renal dysfunction because of the very high protein that is associated with it. সেই জায়গাতে আমি যদি একটু ইয়েটা দিতে থাকি, একটু অল্প কার্বোহাইড্রেট দিই, the purity of keto diet gets a little bit, diluted, but your body will get at least some carbohydrate for the basic sources. So body is not getting the shock of totally shifting from petrol to diesel. Hybrid একটা mode create করা হলো basically. So that is a slightly more physiological, but effect will not be as drastic as keto, but quite useful. So that is something called low carb diet. এটা হয়তো পরীক্ষায় আসবে না এক্ষুনি right now. Okay. So এরপরে যেটা হচ্ছে VO2 max. VO2 max, what is VO2 max? That is the maximal amount of oxygen muscles and body can consume during severe exercise. What is the level of VO2 max? It is 3.5 liter per minute, 3.5 liter per minute in untrained person and 5 liter per minute in trained person. In males, male athletes, তাদের মধ্যে এটা দেখা গেছে 5 liter per minute in trained person. কি করে বাড়ে? During exercise. কার্ডিয়াক আউটপুট বাড়ছে, ভেনাস রিটার্ন বাড়ছে। আচ্ছা মানছি, ভেনাস রিটার্নটা কোথায় যায়? হার্টে যায়। সো ভেনাস রিটার্ন ইজ আ পোস্ট মাসল ইভেন্ট। ভেনাস রিটার্ন ইজ আ পোস্ট মাসল ইভেন্ট, তাই তো? কারণ কি, তোমার মাসেলে যে ফ্লোটা হচ্ছে, এনি ফ্লো, সেটা তো আর্টারিয়াল সাইড, ক্যাপিলারি অ্যান্ড দেন ইনটু মাসল, দেন ভেনাস সাইড, ক্যাপিলারি, ব্যাক টু ভেন। Venous return is definitely cardiac output increases, blood flow increases to everywhere, সেটা একটা cause. Any other cause? Local metabolites, তাতে কি হচ্ছে? Vasodilation, দুটো জিনিস হচ্ছে, not only local metabolites. One is, মাথায় রাখবে, endothelium derived relaxing factor, that is nitric oxide, EDRF, endothelium derived relaxing factor, EDRF, নাইট্রিক অক্সাইড একটা ইম্পর্টেন্ট পার্ট। ইডিআরএফটা কখন বেরোয়? ইট ইজ ডিউ টু দ্য শিয়ার স্ট্রেস অন দি আর্টারিওল অর শিয়ার স্ট্রেস অন ভেসেল। তুমি যখনই এক্সারসাইজ করছো, ভেসেলে তো স্ট্রেচ পড়ছে, স্ট্রেচ পড়লেই এন্ডোথেলিয়ামটা, ভাস্কুলার এন্ডোথেলিয়াম গেটস স্টিমুলেটেড অ্যান্ড ইট সিক্রিটস দিস নাইট্রিক অক্সাইড। সিক্রিট করলে কি হচ্ছে? ইট অলসো কজেস ভেসোডাইলেশন. That's why it's very important to do exercise, because it will reduce the overall plaque formation in atherosclerosis and reduce the vascular tone. Simultaneously, it will reduce the vascular resistance. Vascular resistance কমলে afterload কমে। Exercise helps in reduction of afterload. কোশ্চেনটাতে যদি আসি, this is EDRF. এক হচ্ছে local metabolite, what he told, that is a chemical vasodilation that is happening. This is also a chemical, but happening through a physical stress. That is shear stress, stretch of endothelium, that will lead to release of this kind of vascular endothelial factor like nitric oxide. তাহলে অনেকটা বেড়ে গেল। থার্ড ফ্যাক্টর, আরো ফ্যাক্টর আছে। 4 এ 4 পেতে গেলে এই ফ্যাক্টর গুলো সব বলতে হবে, একটা বললে 4 এ 2। আরো ফ্যাক্টর আছে। এনিবডি? রিক্রুটমেন্ট। হোয়াট ইজ রিক্রুটমেন্ট? নর্মালি এমন অনেক সময় দেখা যায় অনেকগুলো ক্যাপিলারিজ দে আর ক্লোজড। যখনই তুমি শুরু করছো এক্সারসাইজ, নিউ ক্যাপিলারি, ওল্ড ক্যাপিলারিজ হুইচ ওয়ার ক্লোজড, দে আর নাও ওপেনিং আপ। কিভাবে ওপেন হচ্ছে? এগেইন ইডিআরএফ। সিমিলার থিং হ্যাপেন্স ইন পালমোনারি ক্যাপিলারি বেড। অনেকগুলো অ্যালভিওলি এবং অনেকগুলো ক্যাপিলারি আর নট পেটেন্ট অ্যাট রেস্ট। এখন বসে আছো, দোজ আর নট পেটেন্ট। ইউ স্টার্ট রানিং, দোজ উইল বি পেটেন্ট। ক্লিয়ার? তাহলে কোশ্চেনের অ্যান্সার হচ্ছে কার্ডিয়াক আউটপুট ইনক্রিজেস, ইডিআরএফ, লোকাল মেটাবোলাইটস, রিক্রুটমেন্ট। 4টে পয়েন্ট, 4 নাম্বার। আন্ডারস্টুড? আমরা তার কমেও অনেককে 3 দিয়ে দিয়েছি, কিন্তু 4 পেতে গেলে এই 4টে পয়েন্ট ইউজ করতে হবে। 2.5 বা 3 ম্যাক্সিমাম লোক স্কোর করেছে এটাতে, বিকজ দে অনলি সেড, এই ক্লাসেই দেখো কি হচ্ছে সেইটাই, অনলি 2টো বা 3টে হয়তো সে বলেছে। যাকে VO2 max. Next question comes, which system is the limiting system for exercise? আগে বলে গেছিলাম, এটাকে একটু এক্সপ্লেন করে দেবো। Which system is the limiting system for exercise? Is it central nervous system? Is it respiratory system? Is it cardiovascular system? Respiratory system, কতজন হাত তোলো? How many of you are in favor of respiratory system? এবার কেউ হাত তুলছে না, তুমি একজন। আচ্ছা, CNS, সেন্ট্রাল নার্ভাস সিস্টেম, কজন মনে করছে? অর্থটা কি? কোশ্চেনের অর্থ হচ্ছে তুমি দৌড়াচ্ছ, কেন থামবে? কোশ্চেন ইজ which system will force you to stop exercise? হ্যাঁ, cardiac system. Okay, correct. Cardiac system কেন? Now let us explain that. Respiratory নয়, respiratory নয়. Try to understand. There is what is the limiting value of cardiac system? Respiratory system, what is the cardiac system এর limiting value টা কি? Maximal heart rate, MHR. MHR কত হয়? 220 minus age. Maximal heart rate হচ্ছে 220 minus age. তাহলে যদি 20 বছরের ছেলে হয়, his MHR normally will be 200. Most of the time it is like that. আমরা মোটামুটি we feel intense fatigue if we reach 90% of MHR. মানে ধরো তোমার ক্ষেত্রে 200 ধরো হলো, আমি ধরে নিচ্ছি, স্পেকুলেট করছি, মোস্ট অফ ইউ আর এট 20, 200. সো অ্যারাউন্ড 180 উইল বি ফিলিং এক্সট্রিম এক্সহশন। তারপরেও ইউ ক্যান কন্টিনিউ, বাট থিংস উইল কন্টিনিউয়াসলি বিকাম রিস্কিয়ার টিল আ পয়েন্ট ইউ উইল বি আনএবল টু কন্টিনিউ এনিমোর। মানে মোটামুটি 195 টাইপ রিচ করে গেলে ইউ উইল স্টপ, ইউ উইল বি সো ফ্যাটিগড ইউ কান্ট কন্টিনিউ ইট এনিমোর। ক্লিয়ার? ইট ইজ MHR. রেসপিরেটরি সিস্টেমের হাইয়েস্ট ভ্যালু হচ্ছে MVV, ম্যাক্সিমাল ভেন্টিলেটরি ভলিউম, MVV। এন্ড MVV এর ভ্যালুটা হচ্ছে ম্যাক্সিমাল ভেন্টিলেটরি ভলিউম, এটা কিছু বইতে MVCও বলছে, ম্যাক্সিমাল ভেন্টিলেটরি ক্যাপাসিটি, অলমোস্ট দ্য সেম। ভলিউম ক্যাপাসিটি বোথ আর ভলিউমস, এটা খেয়াল রাখবে। লাংসের ক্ষেত্রে যে ভলিউম আছে আর ক্যাপাসিটি আছে, বোথ আর ভলিউমস, নাথিং এলস। ক্যাপাসিটি ইউজুয়ালি প্লুরাল ভলিউম, আর ভলিউম ইউজুয়ালি সিঙ্গুলার ভলিউম। এই ডিফারেন্স রয়েছে। সো ক্যাপাসিটি ইজ ইউজুয়ালি সামেশন অফ ভলিউম, আর কিছু না। সো MVV ইজ 150 to 170 লিটার। দিস ইজ MVV। ক্লিয়ার? এই এতটা MVV, এত লিটার অক্সিজেন আমাদের লাগে না, এত লিটার এয়ার, ইটস ইউজুয়ালি এয়ার, নট অক্সিজেন, অক্সিজেনের 20%। সো এত লিটার air we don't require to reach VO2 max. VO2 max এ reach করবার জন্য 100 liter per minute is sufficient. So to reach VO2 max, ventilatory volume 100 liter per minute is sufficient. That means when we reach VO2 max, we still have a reserve, quite a long reserve. 50 থেকে 70 লিটার পার মিনিটের রিজার্ভ আমাদের রয়েছে। মানে if really needed, our respiratory system can be pushed further. But by now already we have reached VO2 max. What's the reason? The reason is at VO2 max, cardiac output has already reached its maximum. At VO2 max, cardiac output has already reached its maximum. What is cardiac output? Cardiac output is equal to stroke volume into heart rate. At the highest position, what is heart rate? That is MHR. তার বেশি তুমি যেতে পারো না। And you will see, usually even in very high degree exercise, stroke volume can only be increased up to 50%. যা stroke volume 100 যদি হয়, সেটাকে 150 অবধি বাড়ানো যেতে পারে। So stroke volume is also, this is stroke volume max, সেইটাও রিচ করে গেছে। So stroke volume max and MHR, এই দুটোর প্রোডাক্ট হচ্ছে সেই কার্ডিয়াক আউটপুট which will reach us up to the VO2 max. Clear holo? So the question is, the answer হচ্ছে cardiovascular system is the limiting factor on exercise, because at VO2 max, CO, cardiac output, reaches the maximum. MHR reaches the maximum, heart rate reaches the maximum. But there is still, a buffer present in the respiratory system. Only a portion of MVV is utilized till now. MVV can go higher. When it starts, the moment oxygen consumption is over or oxygen supply is going down, lactate accumulation starts. The point of lactate accumulation is known as lactate threshold. The point of lactate accumulation, এটা কিন্তু স্পোর্টস ল্যাবগুলোতে ল্যাকটেট মেজার করা হয়। তোমরা সিভিজি গ্লুকোজ মেজার করা দেখেছো? ছোট গ্লুকোমিটার দিয়ে যে গ্লুকোজ আঙ্গুলে ফুটিয়ে মেজার করা হয়, ওরকম মেশিন আছে। ল্যাকটেট মেজার করারও মেশিন আছে, ঠিক ওই রকমই মেশিন। লোকটা ট্রেডমিলে দৌড়াচ্ছে, মাঝপথেই জাস্ট হাত প্রিক করে ল্যাকটেট দেখা যায়। স্পোর্টস ল্যাবে, স্পোর্টস মেডিসিন ল্যাবে দিস ইজ আ ভেরি রেগুলার প্র্যাকটিস। এখানে হয়তো রেগুলার লাইফে দেখবে না, পরবর্তীকালে ইফ সাম অফ ইউ goes into sports medicine, which is a quite nice specialty nowadays, কারণ এত আইপিএল আইএসএল হচ্ছে প্রত্যেকটা জায়গাতে লট অফ স্কোপ, লোক নেই। তো এরকম যারা যাবে এই জিনিসগুলো দিস আর দি থিংস রেগুলারলি এগুলো দেখা হয় আর কি। এর অনেকগুলো যে হ্যান্ড গ্রিপ ডায়নামোমিটার করেছো, আর্গোমিটার যেগুলো করেছো, যেগুলোর ইউজ এখন বুঝতে পারছো না, ওগুলোর সব ডিজিটালাইজড ভার্সন এসে গেছে। এন্ড দোজ আর রেগুলারলি ওইভাবে হয়তো করতে হবে না ইন দ্যাট অ্যানালগ ফ্যাশন, বাট অল ডিজিটালাইজড ভার্সনস আর দেয়ার। হ্যান্ড গ্রিপ স্ট্রেংথ থেকে শুরু করে, কারণ ফ্যাটিক কখন আসছে, দিস ইজ ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্ট। গুড ট্রেনিং মিনস ইট উইল ডিলে ফ্যাটিক, তাই তো? আজকে 10 বছর ধরে কেউ একজন ফুটবল খেলছে, আগে 40 মিনিট দৌড়াতে পারতো, এখন 80 মিনিট দৌড়াতে পারছে। দ্যাট মিনস কি, লোকটা তো সেম। There are certain mechanism which is delaying fatigue. Delaying fatigue means delaying lactic acid production or lactic acid accumulation. Production টাও যদি ডিলে না হয়, at least the accumulation has to be delayed. Accumulation means কি? When accumulation starts, when production overweighs elimination. Production হচ্ছে simultaneously it is getting eliminated. কিভাবে eliminate হচ্ছে? If there is oxygen, it will burn lactic acid into pyruvate. পাথরটা ঘুরে গেল। যখনই oxygen level is low, তখনই lactate will be built up. So the moment lactate accumulation starts above threshold, we call it lactate threshold. Normally it is seen lactate threshold is 50% of VO2 max. It is in untrained person. MCQ. Untrained er khetre lactate threshold is 50% of VO2 max. So whenever you are running, your VO2 max is reaching somewhere around 1.7, 1.8 liter per minute. At that time lactate accumulation starts and you start having fatigue. Clear? In trained person, it may rise up to 80% of VO2 max. So, in trained person, a trained person ter VO2 max ho bere geche. The good thing is that, tale trained person ter VO2 max hocche 5 liter. Highest training er kotha bolchi. Tar 80% hocche 4 liter. Tale kotota barlo exercise. 1.7 liter per minute lactate threshold আসছে in untrained person, 4 liter per minute lactate threshold আসছে in trained person. You see the change. So এতটা চেঞ্জ আছে, and that's evident. আমি যেটা বলছি 4 লিটারে আসছে, 4.1 লিটারে আসছে, these are in Olympians. Much difference there, and this is the effect of training. Effect of training actually keeps on pushing the lactate threshold towards right, keeps on pushing the VO2 max towards right. Also this, yes. So lactate threshold ভীষণ important. Next question, DOMS. DAMS নয়, DOMS. Okay, so DOMS হচ্ছে delayed onset muscle soreness. Delayed onset muscle soreness. কি জিনিস এটা? Every one of us have experienced this. What is DOMS? DOMS কি? এটা কি বস্তু? ডিলেড অনসেট মাসল সোরনেস। কোনদিন জিমে যাও না, অল অফ আ সাডেন গেলে, গিয়ে হঠাৎ করে প্রচন্ড মানে উৎসাহ পেয়ে 40 কেজির বেঞ্চ প্রেস করা শুরু করলে পরদিন হাত নড়ছে না, দ্যাট ইজ ডমস। ওই দিনে বোঝা যাবে না, পরদিন বোঝা যাবে। রিজন অনেকগুলো, তার মধ্যে ল্যাকটেট অ্যাকিউমুলেশন ইজ ওয়ান রিজন, লোকাল মেটাবোলাইট অ্যাকিউমুলেশন ইজ দ্য সেকেন্ড রিজন, মাইক্রো টিয়ার 2 ফাইবার্স ইজ দ্য থার্ড রিজন। তাহলে ডিলেড অনসেট মাসল সোরনেস, ইট হ্যাপেন্স ইন আনট্রেন্ড পারসন or in trained person on supraphysiological load. ধরো ট্রেনিং রেগুলার দেয়, 50 কেজি বেঞ্চ প্রেস করতে পারে, all of a sudden সে হয়তো 2 বছর ধরে করছে, all of a sudden he tries 80 kilo bench press, next day he will be feeling some pain, that is delayed onset muscle soreness, very common. ট্রেনিং যখন হয়, এনি ট্রেনিং প্রোগ্রাম, কারণ ডমস ভীষণভাবে তোমার ট্রেনিং এফিসিয়েন্সি কমিয়ে দিতে পারে অন দ্য নেক্সট ডে। নর্মাল পারসন হু আর নট রিলেটেড টু স্পোর্টস, তাদের ক্ষেত্রে অসুবিধা নেই, সে পরের দিন রেস্ট নেবে, ঠিক আছে, 2 দিন রেস্ট নিলে ডমস ইউজুয়ালি ইট উইল গো অ্যাওয়ে। গুড হাইড্রেশন অলসো স্টিয়ার্স ইট অ্যাওয়ে। বাট যারা ধরো রেগুলারলি খেলে, অ্যাথলিটস, তাদের ক্ষেত্রে ডমস যদি হয়, পরের দিন সে খেলতেই পারছে না, দ্যাট ইজ সামথিং টু বি অ্যাভয়েডেড। ক্লিয়ার? তাদের জন্য ট্রেনিং শুড বি ডেভেলপড ইন সাচ আ ওয়ে টু মিনিমাইজ ডমস। ওদেরকে গ্রেডেড ট্রেনিং করতে হবে, মানে এমন কিছু করবো না 50 কিলো তুলতে পারি, কালকে 80 কিলো তুলবো, 50 তুলতে পারলে কাল 55 তুলবো, প্রোভাইডেড এবং ফলোড বাই প্রপার রেস্ট অফ দ্যাট বডি পার্ট। This is the way training is, stepwise fashion training is developed. So DOMS again, delayed onset muscle soreness, important for OSPE, MCQ. Delayed onset muscle soreness. So it is repayment of loan of oxygen. Repayment of loan of oxygen with interest. This is just that. So repayment of loan or repayment of O2 debt with interest. Clear? Why this is needed? So whenever we are exercising, first the cellular level oxidation helps. Second, anaerobic glycolysis helps. Third, myoglobin oxygen level helps. And the aerobic glycolysis helps. So cellular level oxidation ta kishe hocche? ATP breakdown. Phosphocreatine, ATP breakdown is required. So this is the way oxygen is being utilized. So first is ATP breakdown. Second is both almost simultaneously anaerobic glycolysis. Myoglobin O2. Remember, myoglobin contains, one molecule of myoglobin contains 1 molecule of oxygen. 1 molecule of hemoglobin contains 4 molecule of oxygen. This is important question for MCQ. So myoglobin oxygen, and last it comes to the aerobic glycolysis. So as exercise moves on, these steps, continue to go. A time comes যখন the internal oxygen will no longer be available and we need oxygen from outside. That is only possible by increasing the ventilatory reserve. Clear? দুটো জিনিস এখানে আসে। O2 consumption, the second is lactic consumption, lactic O2 depth. So alactic এর ক্ষেত্রে যেটা হচ্ছে, after the exercise is over, to replenish the phosphocreatine store, to replenish the myoglobin store, to replenish the tissue store, our respiration increases, ventilation increases, respiration at higher rate continues. This will replenish the non-lactate part of the exercise. There is another requirement of oxygen to replenish or to handle lactic acid which has been accumulated. For lactic acid oxygen utilization, what it does, it helps in oxidation of lactic acid. Oxidation of lactate. পুরো সিস্টেমটা হচ্ছে increase ventilation after exercise. Why this is required? To replenish the oxygen store and to convert the lactic acid to some other molecule, mostly the pyruvate. The respiration continues at a higher rate after the exercise is over to improve the myoglobin oxygen content, to improve the cellular oxygen content, and to wash out other local metabolites. Coming to lactic acid, to convert lactate into pyruvate or some other molecule. So this is all over the O2 rate, which is 11 liter per minute. It is usually the 11 liter per minute. So এটা কিছুই না, basically exercise এর সময় we have an increased ventilatory reserve. Even post exercise we see that ventilation is still on at a higher level. Reason is to replenish O2 store, to eliminate lactate. That's it. Ekdom simple bhabe dekhla eta. So last part of the class we have already reached, that is effect of sedentary lifestyle. Effect of sedentary lifestyle. Effect of sedentary lifestyle তোমাদের কোনো বইতেই খুব ভালো করে পাবে না, so I will be giving you a small note over here. As per the WHO statistics, above 15 years, round the globe, or global statistics, above 15 years, 31% population is leading a sedentary lifestyle currently, which increased during COVID and lockdown, which has been reduced a little bit, but still it is like that. তাহলে কতটা সংখ্যক 31% all over the world. We have poor countries যেখানে sedentary lifestyle কম because they have to walk or they have to run for food. We have rich countries যেখানে sedentary lifestyle is more. If we average out the whole thing, it is more than 31%. So 1/3 of population is sedentary. তারা বসে আছে, তারা কিচ্ছু করছে না right now. তারা কিছু করছে না, তার ফলে তাদের বডি কিছু করছে। And there are certain effects of sedentary lifestyle. First of all, second statistics. Sedentary lifestyle is the 4th largest risk factor to death nowadays. তাহলে যদি দেখি ক্যান্সার, হার্ট ডিজিজ, অ্যাক্সিডেন্ট, sedentary lifestyle, তাহলে তুমি ঘরের বাইরে বেরোলেও সমস্যা, অ্যাক্সিডেন্ট হতে পারে, ঘরে বসে থাকলেও সমস্যা। 3rd or 4th, মানে death is inevitable, either by cancer or by cardiovascular system, cardiovascular disease, cancer, accident, sedentary lifestyle. Clear? এইটা হচ্ছে 4th largest cause of morbidity in all over the world. Sedentary lifestyle যদি কেউ লিড করে, তার একটা কয়েকটা ইউনিট আছে। এই ইউনিটটা বইতে পাবেন, আমি বলছি, দিস ইজ নোন অ্যাজ metabolic equivalent. So what is a MET? One, এটা একটা unit of activity, unit of metabolism. If a person is just lying down completely at rest but not sleeping in an ambient temperature, BMR মনে আছে, basal metabolic rate, একদম 12 থেকে 18 ঘন্টা শুয়ে থেকে without any movement, not sleeping, but not eating, not drinking, not doing any activity, ambient temperature, ambient pressure, ambient humidity, এটা যদি থাকে তখন এটাকে বলা হয় BMR, basal metabolic rate. That is the most basic metabolic rate when you are doing nothing. Even if you are doing nothing, metabolism is on in body. So one MET is almost that. One MET is the metabolic equivalent of a person at rest. তাহলে তুমি যদি কিচ্ছু না করো, অনেকে পরীক্ষায় 1 MET ছিল, এবারে কিচ্ছু করেন, চুপচাপ রেস্ট নিচ্ছিল। So one MET is that. So that is metabolic equivalent, একদম রেস্টে থাকলে। sedentary lifestyle বলা হচ্ছে, it is sedentary if your metabolism is 1, then it is sedentary. And vigorous activity is if the MET is, so it is a spectrum: sleep, sedentary, light activity, moderate activity, vigorous activity, পুরো spectrum: sleep, sedentary, light activity, moderate activity, vigorous activity. Sleep আর sedentary-র মধ্যে আমাদের 1 MET-টা রয়েছে। sedentary-টা হচ্ছে 1.5 approximately that, vigorous হচ্ছে 6 and above, light activity, moderate activity এর মাঝামাঝি জায়গাতে রয়েছে। Clear everybody? This is all about MET. Second, so MET কে যেটা বলা হয়, MET is also known as RMR, resting metabolic rate. MET is also known as RMR, resting metabolic rate. Effect of sedentary lifestyle, পরপর কয়েকটা পয়েন্ট বলবো, ইউ ক্যান জাস্ট হ্যাভ আ নোট, ওইটা দিয়ে আমি আজকে শেষ করবো। এফেক্ট অফ sedentary lifestyle একটা একটা সিস্টেমের উপর, অন CVS, cardiovascular system, তোমরা বলো কি হতে পারে, তারপরে আই উইল অ্যাড অন ইফ রিকোয়ার্ড। কার্ডিওভাস্কুলার সিস্টেম, কেউ ধরো sedentary lifestyle লিড করছে, কার্ডিওভাস্কুলার কি কি সমস্যা হতে পারে? হ্যাঁ, কার্ডিয়াক আউটপুট ডিক্রিজ, আচ্ছা, হোয়াট এলস? Vascular. Can atherosclerosis be precipitated by sedentary lifestyle? Yes. How? Next question is how? Can dyslipidemia be precipitated by sedentary lifestyle? Dyslipidemia, hyperlipidemia, cholesterol disturbance. Yes or no? Yes, how again? Then something else? Okay, দুটো reason মাথায় রাখবে. So sedentary lifestyle, understanding this is just understanding exercise and just invert that. So whatever we get, whatever benefit we get during exercise, sedentary lifestyle just will abolish that one. Clear? তাহলে exercise করলে কি হচ্ছে? Number one, exercise helps in increasing lipoprotein lipase, which is important for cholesterol transport, cholesterol metabolism and breakdown, triglyceride breakdown. যদি sedentary lifestyle এ থাকো, LPL level will be go down, lipoprotein lipase level will be low. So accumulation of atherosclerotic plaque will be more. Chances of accumulation of atherosclerotic plaque will be more because of reduced lipoprotein lipase. তাহলে sedentary lifestyle, ছোট্ট করে পয়েন্ট, LPL goes down, triglyceride goes up, chance of atherosclerosis goes up. এটাকে এক্সপ্লেন করে দিতে পারবে। LPL পড়ে যাচ্ছে নিচে, লাইপোপ্রোটিন লাইপেসটা কমে যাচ্ছে, কোলেস্টেরল হ্যান্ডলিংটা খারাপ হচ্ছে, ট্রাইগ্লিসারাইড লেভেল বাড়ছে, অ্যাকিউমুলেশন অফ ফ্যাট ইনসাইড ভেসেল বেড়ে যাচ্ছে। সেকেন্ড পয়েন্ট, একটু আগে যেটা বলছিলাম, যে দ্য মোমেন্ট ইউ ডু এক্সারসাইজ দেয়ার উইল বি শিয়ার স্ট্রেস অন দি, শিয়ার স্ট্রেস মানে বেন্ডিং এর জন্য যে স্ট্রেস অন দি পাইপস, পাইপ বেন্ড করলে একটা স্ট্রেস হচ্ছে পাইপের ওয়ালের উপরে। So this is known as shear stress. If you move your hands and legs, the vessels will be under shear stress. That is a physical activated stress. এই স্ট্রেসটা কি করছে? It releases nitric oxide, which is endothelium derived relaxing factor. তাহলে vasodilation যদি কমে যায়, it will lead to increased total peripheral resistance. That will lead to increased pressure, and it is an independent risk factor for heart disease. So this is a risk factor for heart disease. Third thing, definitely if you sit down for a long time and daily, body mass index will go up. More central obesity, more weight. Definitely weight will be increased. If you don't do any exercise, weight will be increased. BMI will go up. Increased BMI is again a risk factor for diabetes, again a risk factor for, heart disease, hypertension, kind of that. What will happen to bone health? Regular বসে থাকলে হাড়গোড়ের অবস্থা কি হবে? It will induce osteoporosis. So there will be decay of bone and it will induce osteoporosis. Bone health will be degraded. Bones will be weaker. Bone এমনই একটা tissue, if you continuously put it under tensile strength in a graded physiological manner, it will be strengthened. If you take off this tensile strength from bone, it will be weakened. যে জিনিসটা ঘটে in the astronauts. Suppose you are an astronaut and you are in a low gravity or no gravity situation for 6 months to 8 months, your bone health will be degraded. You will be taller. মহাকাশে গেলে কিন্তু একটু হাইট বেড়ে যায়. You know that? মহাকাশে গেলে 3 to 4 centimeter height can increase. প্রত্যেকটা ডিস্ক, যে আমাদের যে ভার্টিব্রায় যে ডিস্ক আছে, ডিস্ক প্রত্যেকটার হাইট বেড়ে যেতে পারে. Because gravity is pulling us down. ওখানে গেলে কিন্তু লো গ্র্যাভিটি প্ল্যানেটে বা জিরো গ্র্যাভিটি স্পেসে যখনই অ্যাস্ট্রোনটরা ফেরে 3 to 4 সেন্টিমিটারের মতন হাইট ইনক্রিজ করে, বাট দে বিকাম ভেরি উইক। এতটাই উইক হয় যে যখন দ্য মোমেন্ট দে ল্যান্ড, আফটার দ্যাট দে কান্ট স্ট্যান্ড অন দেয়ার ওন ফিট বিকজ দে ওয়ার কমপ্লিটলি ডিফারেন্ট গ্র্যাভিটেশনাল ফোর্স ফর লাস্ট 7-8 months. It takes a month to 2 months of rehab after they come back. মহাকাশ থেকে ফিরলে কোয়ারেন্টাইন হয়। এনি আইডিয়া অ্যাবাউট দ্যাট? স্পেস থেকে এলে কোয়ারেন্টাইন করতে হয় লোককে। হোয়াট দ্য রিজন? ওয়েদার দে আর ক্যারিং এনি আননোন ভাইরাস অর নট, উই ডোন্ট নো, রাইট? ওয়েদার দে আর ক্যারিং এনি আননোন প্যাথোজেন, উই ডোন্ট নো। প্লাস সেকেন্ডারিলি ওদের টি সেল, বি সেল, এগুলো মহাকাশে এতদিন থাকতে থাকতে দে ওয়ার ইন আ স্টেরাইল এনভায়রনমেন্ট. All of a sudden they are getting exposed to the toxic environment we call humanity. Sorry, যাই হোক। So তার সাথে সাথে so they may contact some diseases. এগেইন তাদেরকে কিন্তু কোয়ারেন্টাইন করে রাখা হয় ফর দ্য সেক অফ হিউম্যানিটি, ফর দ্য সেক অফ দেমসেলস। এই ব্যাপারগুলো রয়েছে। ফেরার পরে দেন মহাকাশেও মানে ওয়ান্স দে আর ইন স্পেস দেয়ার আর স্পেশালি ডিজাইন ট্রেডমিল which doesn't require gravity but they can exercise। কিভাবে করছে, মানে অ্যাক্সিসের এগেইনস্ট রেজিস্ট্যান্স দিয়ে দিয়ে ট্রেডমিল রয়েছে, সেখানে they can work out, but once they come back they have to retrain themselves, they lose muscles, they lose bones once they come back over here। এই জিনিসগুলো প্রত্যেকটা you need to understand। Similarly in case of sedentary lifestyle, মহাকাশে না গিয়েও মহাকাশের মতন এফেক্ট পাওয়া যায়। BMI বেড়ে যাচ্ছে, you will be bigger, of no use, higher chance of diabetes, higher chance of this, clear? Can sedentary lifestyle increase the chance of diabetes? Yes, how? কিভাবে করছে? সিম্পল। এই ধরনের প্রশ্ন এলে একটা দুটো ওয়ার্ড অ্যাকচুয়ালি উই ট্রাই টু লুক ফর ইন ইউর আনসার। কি বেড়ে যায় যদি সেডেন্টারি, if you lead a sedentary lifestyle, what will be increased? Insulin resistance। Insulin resistance, why insulin resistance increases if you are sedentary? সারাদিন বসে আছো, কেন ইনসুলিন রেজিস্ট্যান্সটা বাড়বে? বিকজ ইনসুলিন রেজিস্ট্যান্স ডিপেন্ডস, সেন্সিটিভিটি অফ ইনসুলিন ডিপেন্ডস অন দ্য স্কেলিটাল মাসল মাস। If skeletal muscle mass goes down, there will be reduced sensitivity towards insulin। Insulin sensitivity in skeletal muscle mass কোন চ্যানেল দিয়ে হয়? GLUT4। skeletal muscle mass কমে গেলে we call it sarcopenia। একটা কথা রয়েছে, this is known as sarcopenia, very commonly used nowadays। এটা খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট একটা জিনিস, অস্টিওপোরোসিসের মতোই সার্কোপেনিয়া ইজ ইম্পর্টেন্ট। So if your muscle mass goes down, the expression of GLUT4 will also go down, insulin sensitivity will go down, you are prone to hyperinsulinemia, which is the root cause of type 2 diabetes। So this is one of the root causes, sedentary lifestyle is one of the root causes of type 2 diabetes। Similarly, sedentary lifestyle can cause hypertension। কিভাবে? ওই সেম অ্যাকশন, সেম কথা, TPR বেড়ে যাচ্ছে, total peripheral resistance is increased, less amount of nitric oxide EDRF, less amount of local metabolites, less vasodilation। So if less vasodilation persistently, the TPR, total peripheral resistance is more, afterload is more, definitely the diastolic BP is more, এবং একটা টাইমের পর দেখা যায় systolic BP is also high because of shifting in renin angiotensin aldosterone system। সেখানেও কিছুটা চেঞ্জ আসছে sedentary lifestyle এর জন্য। So itself sedentary lifestyle can lead to osteoporosis, can lead to type 2 diabetes, can lead to hypertension, can lead to obesity, can lead to pre-diabetes, সেটাও একটা হতে পারে বেসিক্যালি। অ্যান্ড আরো ইম্পর্টেন্ট যেটা দিয়ে শেষ করবো, sedentary lifestyle can also lead to depression and anxiety। Why? এক তো আমি যদি সারাদিন বসে থাকি, আমার কাজগুলো কেউ করবে না, পরশু থেকে আমার অ্যাংজাইটি হবে ডেফিনেটলি, বিকজ আই উইল কন্টিনিউয়াসলি ফেল দ্য ডেডলাইনস। সারাদিন বসে থাকলে তো এটা হবেই। তারপর সারাদিন বসে যদি আমি সারাদিন নিউজ দেখতে থাকি, তাহলে দেখবো সবাই সব করছে, আমি কিছু করছি না, আমার আরো অ্যাংজাইটি হবে। দ্যাটস অ্যানাদার। বাট অ্যাকচুয়ালি দৌড়ালে কি হয়? Why exercise is important for mood? কি মনে হয়? Does exercise elevate mood? Yes or no? Yes. Why? এটা লাস্ট আজকের। এক্সারসাইজ এলিভেট করে মুডকে কিভাবে? হ্যাঁ, ডোপামিন না, এক্স্যাক্ট ডোপামিন বলতে পারো, আর এক্স্যাক্টলি ডোপামিন নয়, but you are there to some extent, dopamine is there, acute pleasure dopamine is there, correct? What else? Something else, serotonin। So happy hormones, if you do exercise there will be happy hormone secretion। happy hormone এর মধ্যে কি আছে? কিছু opioids ও secreted হয়। কি কি আছে? serotonin, dynorphin, enkephalin, these are happy hormones। কিচ্ছু যদি মনে না থাকে, serotonin। Serotonin is used as a mood elevator। serotonin এর রোলই হচ্ছে মুডটাকে আপ করা। So if you regularly exercise, serotonin will come out। সেই এক্সারসাইজের জন্য বিশাল কিছু করতে হবে না, brisk walking is also sufficient। জোরে জোরে 30 মিনিটস হাঁটলেও serotonin রিলিজ হয়, but you have to walk fast। তাহলে সেরোটোনিন মেজর এরিয়া হচ্ছে গ্যাস্ট্রোকনেমিয়া সোলিয়াস, ওই জায়গা থেকে আরো বেশি, ওখানে সেরোটোনিন লাইক কিছু পেপটাইড রিলিজ হয়। মেজর স্কেলিটাল মাসেলগুলো এবং গ্যাস্ট্রোকনেমিয়া সোলিয়াস one of the most important area for that। So basically serotonin like chemicals and itself serotonin are released in case of exercise, If you lead a sedentary life, it will not be there, which may lead to depression and anxiety. সাবস্টেন্স অ্যাবিউসও কিন্তু এটার সাথে কানেক্টেড, সেডেন্টারি লাইফস্টাইলের সঙ্গে বিভিন্ন সাবস্টেন্স অ্যাবিউস। যত একটা লোক ডিপ্রেশন অ্যান্ড অ্যাংজাইটির মধ্যে যাবে, প্লেজার সাইকেলটাকে কমপ্লিট করার জন্য হি উইল বি নিডিং, রিকোয়ারিং দ্য কিক ফ্রম ডোপামিন। এই ডোপামিন কিকের জন্য কিন্তু পৃথিবীর সমস্ত নেশা চলছে, প্রত্যেকটা জিনিস, বিকজ দ্য মোমেন্ট ইউ be it smoking, be it alcohol, be it any other narcotics, whatever, it acts over there in the reward center of the brain. The moment you take it, dopamine goes up. The moment dopamine goes up, you feel very good. But after a while, when this influx is not there, dopamine comes down. তখনই তোমার মনে আরে কি নেই, ও ওটাই ভালো হয়েছিল, so go there. It's kind of a reflex, condition reflex তৈরি হয়ে যায়। তো কিছুদিন পর লোকটা ভাবতে শুরু করে, if I take alcohol, I will be happy. তারপরের লেভেলে সে ভাবতে শুরু করে, ইফ আই অনলি টেক অ্যালকোহল আই উইল বি হ্যাপি। লাস্ট স্টেপ হচ্ছে অনলি অ্যালকোহল ক্যান মেক মি হ্যাপি। এই জায়গাটায় গিয়ে দ্যাট বিকামস আ ডিপেন্ডেন্স। অ্যালকোহল খাচ্ছে, চোখটা খুলছে, একটু পর যেই ঘুমোচ্ছে আবার অ্যালকোহল খাচ্ছে, দ্যাট বিকামস আ সাইকেল। It's not about alcohol only, প্রত্যেকটা জিনিস, এনিথিং দ্যাট গিভস প্লেজার, whenever it becomes an excess, the person becomes dependent on this, and that is to maintain the steady level of dopamine. এইভাবে পুরো সাইকেলটা চলতে থাকে। So তার জন্য behavioral therapy and other things, medications are there to take someone out of the cycle of this continuous pleasure and reward seeking cycle, যেটা abuse cycle basically. So overall sedentary lifestyle যদি কোশ্চেন আসে, it will come as a short note. CV health, cardiovascular health, bone health, mind health, muscle health, এবং এর মধ্যে metabolic syndrome is also included. Metabolic syndrome মানে তোমার BMI বাড়বে, there will be acanthosis nigricans, skin tag might be there, triglyceridemia might be there, liver may be fatty liver. Fatty liver তো এখন ম্যাক্সিমাম লোকের পাওয়া যায় because of the sedentary lifestyle. Fatty liver is nothing, fat outside on the belly, fat inside on the viscera, that is fatty liver. So these are certain things you need to remember. এটা আসতে পারে as a short note. Okay, so done for today. Thank you.
So before we go to anything new, just understand what have you learned. Now what you are expected out of your exams, you have to understand the exam psychology to pass through the exams. It's not like you are just like digging some hole and bringing some kind of like a stuff from that hole and dropping in front of us and showing us that, see what I have done. I have taken this much of labor and this much of I have produced. It's not like that. So there is a pattern, or there is a way to sail through the exams. Now in an exam we have two parts. One is writing part, that is the expressive skills, that what you have to express, whatever you have learned. And other part which is precise knowledge, which is involving with these MCQs. That means yes or no, whether I know really or not. If yes, you just like go on, take a structure and that's the story ends there. No explanation is required out of that. So that's the easy part. Yes or no, pass or fail kind of thing. So that doesn't need anything. Now what is the expressive part is what we are struggling with right now. That means whenever you are asked to express some of the things, that is a difficult part. That means you have to understand, you have to read, you have to memorize, and that again you have to express with your own ways of own knowledge, and that has to corroborate with the science that you have learned. That means you have given an exam question, you have learned something, and again you are expressing something that is not matching with these things of the facts. You have learned something, you have memorized something, but when you are writing something, that is something else. You are writing something else, whatever you have learned and asked for produce. So for example, we have this question, right? So this particular question, whatever we are given with, the question number 1, we asked about the portal hypertension. Now most of the things we did not get it, or even you have gone through, you are not writing the word portal hypertension. Maybe you do not know the word portal hypertension to write over here. Whatever the most of the students are expressing out here, what is cirrhosis, what is melena, what is hematemesis, what is ascites, you are explaining those things. Those things doesn't give any credit to it. That means what we are asking and what you are producing, that is complete mismatch. So no matter how good you are writing on those elements, you are not making any score, and yielding it is big zero. So that's the thing. So whatever the knowledge you have and whatever the questions, whatever we are asking you, that's a complete mismatch we are getting here. But we are not saying that you are not studying. We are not saying that you are not doing it at all. You are doing it. You are skipping it. All right, it's acceptable. Like you are bunking some of the elements. You are not studying hard, or you are not doing it. But yet you had some element which you are not producing in a smart manner. So had you had written the word, the portal hypertension, and sequelae of this hypertension, this is going on, the clinical manifestations of this individual who is suffering in clinical aspects, that would have covered the story. Rather than smartly answering those things, you are taking the story of the cow who had gone to this riverside, eating grass, looking to the sky and looking into the river, and he fell into the river starts there. So we asked about something about cow, and you narrated some story about the river, how it flows and how it goes. So again, how can we just give you credit for that? And as a result of that, you are not getting a credit on it. So now whatever the questions we are framing out here, and what are the questions that is going to come in future as well, is going to be a clinical applied questions. So this is the thing that you have to understand. The thing which you are understanding or you are learning, the gross anatomy. Now we are one step ahead in asking question. We are not going to ask you about the gross anatomy. We are not asking about tell me that like a dimensions of the portal vein or length of the portal vein, the formations of the portal vein in gross. Rather, we are dropping it in a clinical situations or clinical context. That means the gross, whatever the content you are learning, that you have to conceptualize, and again you have to context it in a clinical scenarios. And that particular clinical scenarios is your exam questions, because that clinical scenarios are going to be your patients. So in your patients, if they are coming with some problem, you are not going to explain that you have a portal vein, you know how it was formed. It was formed with the splenic vein and the inferior mesenteric vein, superior mesenteric vein behind the neck of the pancreas. They will say, okay, let me find another doctor, right? He doesn't know anything. No, it's not true. You know a lot. But thing is, what knowledge is expected out of you, or what knowledge you are going to express, that is different what is expected out of you to produce here. So whatever the contents you are learning, think clinically. Clinically means I am reading something, how this particular things comes as a clinics, that means how the patient is going to come up with, how the patient is going to behave with this. Say for example, a patient who is coming with acute pain abdomen in this epigastric region. Now you have to understand acute epigastric pain in this region with this quadrant knowledge of this anatomy. That means this quadrant is occupied by which organ or which viscerals, and likely this is heading towards which organ diseases. Likely is coming from this particular stomach or kind of transverse colon which is placed on this particular region, or maybe just gallbladder. Maybe they are asking, let's read for the next thing, and then you have to figure out what it is. Say for example, we are asking about something about gastritis, and asking about the question of the gastritis, we are asking about the gastric pits or describe those things. Now no matter how you are writing good on gastritis, we are asking about the histological feature of the gastric pits, because that have cell layer on it, and that particular each of the cells have got different functions. That part is important, and we mentioned that in several times. This particular element is important. But when you are studying, whenever you are preparing, you are studying everything. The blood supply, this particular part which is known as nerve supply, this morphological aspects, and again you have this much of knowledge. So when your exam question is given on, you are producing everything, whatever you know. No, we are not asking for whatever you know thing. We ask you about the clinical contextuality, about this precise knowledge. That means you have to be producing with this much sleek information. That's what you know. That's what we are expected out of it. This is what we have to just like a decode out it. Now, whenever you have this particular exam questions which is given on it, you have figured out. So, for example, we are going to talk about the short notes. This is an easy part to answer and easy part to score marks. Say, for example, we are going to this costodiaphragmatic recess of the pleura. Now, so how we are going to answer that? If the exam question is given as a short note, we have a particular pattern on writing this. Now again, we do not ask you about to produce the book in here. Rather, in a smarter way, you have to produce the element which is required. Even a 4-liner questions, even a 4-liner answer would have been sufficient to score a pass marks. Say for example, you are given with this question like costodiaphragmatic recess. Now, whenever you are breaking it down, we have 4 mark questions on it. So, we have 4 marks and we split these 4 marks into 1, 1, 1, 1, this particular 4 parts. That makes this particular question easy for us. So, whenever you are going to narrate this particular costodiaphragmatic recess, the basic first thing we have to address out here, the definition. That means you have to mention what it is, where it is located. So, you have to just like define the elements. Then you have to name about location, how it is location. Third part is description. And fourth part is clinical application. And if you want to score 4 out of 4, you have to add a simple thing, development, if any, which is required. Now, if you break it down, the costodiaphragmatic recess into these 4 elements, 1-liner element in each of these sentences like definition, location, descriptions, clinical applications and this development, if possible, you can write a few words about it, you have scored 3.5 to 4 out of 4. But what you have achieved here, 50% of you have achieved half out of 4. Writing something here and there, it's not that you do not know that, you know that. But again, you are not focusing on pinpointing writing. Now, why these things is happening? Because you are studying, but not studying in a mindful manner. You are studying as if I am just like studying and just like let go. You have to be mindful whenever you are studying. Now, what I am studying and why I am studying, that's the question you have to ask it. We are not asking you to produce the book. Again, we are not asking that thing. We never ask those things in previous days or even in a future days. We are not going to ask you. We know the limitations. We know that what you are capable of and what we are capable of as well. So, even in the day of the examination, if you were given with these particular questions, many of us won't be able to write the things in a manner, in a structured, summarized way. It is honest confession. But we can produce these things in a structured way, the answer, so that even that we are not producing a great deal of information, but yet we are going to score a good score. So, the problem is, you are writing, you are reading, but it's not in a mindful manner. It's not a smart way of producing an examination. That the smartness you are lacking. So, you have to produce it in this particular way, the way we have produced so far and fail in exam, or get smart and produce in a smarter way and pass in examination. Choice is yours. I am not going to chase you. I am not going to chase cows. Prr, prr, prr. Not like my ways. It's your choice. Going to pass or fail, going to sail or just like sink, it's up to you. No. Other thing, which is other tricky part about here. Whenever the questions is there in anatomy, you have to give a relevant diagram, and that particular diagram you have to mention out here in this particular way with the schematic picture like this. So, whenever you are going to write this description part, You are not going to may not be have a great knowledge about descriptions. You may have very short knowledge about descriptions. Now this part you have to add an image, which is schematic. And again, one schematic image for this section is good enough. You are going to draw like a lateral views or oblique views or something like that. It's not required. So one question with this particular schematic diagram, with one diagram is good enough, and schematic image you have to just like give a boundaries, like whenever you are drawing an image which is like this, and you have to write this of what, and again in an anatomical picture you have to write lower like this. So this reference frame, just like a compass, you have to drop it, and that again it takes like a few seconds about it. Takes only a few seconds only if you practice. If you are not practicing, this thing looks apparently easy, is not going to have the proper shape during examination, because it's high on adrenaline. You are not going to memorize everything and anything related to this particular image and everything. So this is the way we have to produce this particular short notes defined on it. So we have this particular atrioventricular valve. Again, we have a very few students who had this particular answer properly, reaching to this particular aspects which is related to it. So AV valves, whatever the content you have written, which is in a summary manner over here, and that's like a 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade student can produce. So what's the thing about being a medical student and being an 8th grade and 9th grade students? So they will be producing the same informations, whatever you have written. In fact, the information which you are producing, which you are writing out here, is the same what you have gathered in 8th and 10th grade. It has 2 valves, 3 valves, 3 cusps, 4 cusps, atrial end, ventricular end, that's it. So atrioventricular valve means atrioventricular valve complex. That means you have to write this particular base of the valve, ring of the valve, cusp of the valve, chordae tendineae, papillary muscles, which forms these actions, functions, utility, and loss of actions, functions, clinical things. So these things has to be narrated in the same thing: definition, location, description, clinical application, development. Even if you do not write anything about development, just like write something about it, develop some sources. That's it. That covers these things. That means you have a whole picture or broader picture to assess this. So this is the way, whenever you are going to answer in an examination, that covers thing. It doesn't need a great deal of informations. Again, 2-liner, 3-liner, each of these definition, locations, description things, 5 minutes it will gonna take, and it will be over with the schematic diagram and development. And again, looking at it, it looks easy. If you break it down, if I ask you to write about it, say for example, if I give a short note right now to write about framing this particular diagram, it won't be going to be difficult to write in a systematic, schematic ways whenever you're going to write. Now, other thing, this is what you have struggling most: explain why. 2% questions which has been answered by you is having a right directions. Again, explain why. That means you are not being able to explain it why. Now, why we cannot explain it? Because we do not understand the thing. Again, we are not reading mindfully. We are not asking myself, whenever you are reading, why I am reading this thing and where should that be relevant to this knowledge will be. So whenever you are reading, what I am reading and why I am reading, that questions you have to keep in asking again and again. So explain why kind of questions. So this particular element about here, patient with mitral stenosis with the heart may present with dysphagia in difficulty in swallowing. Now how we are going to produce this particular element? So you have to take this particular element in a way, whenever you are going to ask about explain why kind of questions, that you have given way. Now we are going, most of the times we see that you are writing this particular clinical problem 2 times and 3 times and filling up the page and letting go. thinking that we are not going to read and we are going to outsmart us by writing the question itself, and this is. It's not going to happen. Well, we are having a very short brain compared to you. What do you have? But we use that small brain, and you have a big chunk of brain which you are not using it. So that's a difference between using a small chunk of brain and not using a big chunk of brain. All right. So explain why. That's the most difficult part of answering, because it needs really skill. That means you have to know this information, you have to assimilate the information, so why this is happening, and you have to explain it to someone who is layman, who do not understand anything. That means you are teaching something, and this is the most difficult part in writing it in a write-up question whenever you are explaining, and it has a high yield, and most of them are clinical questions. So whenever you are asking this kind of questions, you have to understand what context it has been asked, why this has been asked in examination. Now you see that mitral valve stenosis, if you ask yourself, the patient had got heart problem. Now why on earth this patient with a heart problem will be having a difficulty in swallowing? So the patient should have a chest pain, difficulty, shortness of breath, maybe have discomfort in the chest, something related to it. Now why on earth this patient have difficulty in swallowing, and that has a relevance to it. So that the element you have to understand whenever you are studying the gross anatomy. That particular element, this is a very high yield and very high stake question. So we are asking the problem, asking to relate to the gross anatomy, and again with the gross anatomy relationship, we are asking you to explain why this is happening. This is not an easy question. This is not for weak heart people. This is something which you have very sound anatomical knowledge. Now I explain why. Now we have this particular 4 chambers of the heart, and each chambers have got valves in between whenever it is crossing over, right? Now we have this particular valve which is on the left side, which is damaged. That means stenosis. Now we have to know what do you mean by stenosis. So that's a basic knowledge you have to understand. So we have to know the stenosis, that means it's a narrowing. That means the valve is taking longer time to open. Now if the valve is taking longer time to open, that means the blood which is going to come from this ventricle is going to take more time. Rather, it misses the bus. The time it should be reached to this particular ventricle, it is still in the atrium, and the ventricle and the valve closes on it. That means we have a more pooling of the blood into this particular left atrium because of this valve is not opening and closing smoothly. So this door is not opening smoothly, halting in between, keeping you inside the class. When you are going to move it out, when you should leave this class, you are not able to leave, it's stagnation. So there is a stagnation of the blood which is happening. This is the first element. Now you have to understand the next element. If you have stagnation of the blood, what goes next? So if you have a more blood, we have a more pressure to these walls of the ventricle atrial chambers. If you have more pressure to the atrial chamber, that's going to push this particular walls of this particular atrium in a way. So it's going to dilate. That means it's going to enlarge. Now it's enlarged. So what's a big deal about it? It is enlarged. So how this thing's enlargement causing a threat to us? Now here comes the intrigue knowledge of anatomy of this particular your mediastinum knowledge. So this element, if you do not know, you cannot figure it out. Now if you go to the posterior mediastinum, which is lined by this fibrous pericardium, which is in the middle pericardium making a boundary, the heart which is lying there. So this left atrial chamber, whenever you are studying the anatomical positions of the heart, we mentioned that the heart is not lying in the straight manner. Rather, the right portions of the heart is facing anteriorly, the left portion of the heart is facing posteriorly. It is standing in a style stance like this. So right atrium, right ventricle is facing the anterior side, and the left atrium and the left ventricle is facing backwards. So it is not like this, it is like this, chambers of this heart. So if you have left side which is already on the back side of the chest wall, and if you have this particular left atrium which is enlarged, that enlargement is going to fall back. So, this particular atrial chamber which is happening out here, enlargements of this left atrial chamber, enlargements which is happening here is going on posteriorly. So, this knowledge you have to know. So, apparently it looks like it is dilated, it is going like this, pushed on this direction. But because of the heart which is making an angled position in a normal anatomical region, so this is what it is going on the backward directions. So, behind this particular fibrous pericardium on the posterior mediastinum, we have one structure which is lying on the back side, which is collapsed already, which is the food pipe which is going on the back side. So, this is the intimate relationship of the esophagus which is lying on the posterior mediastinum and lying just behind the left atrial chamber. So, this particular left atrial chamber, as it is posteriorly placed already, dilated, falls back more on the posteriorly, compresses this esophagus. So, patient do not have any problem whatsoever unless until they start eating. They do not have any problem in chewing the thing. The moment they start swallowing, either they have the compressive effort by the enlarged heart which is filled up with this blood, compressing on it and taking this pain, because it takes this particular load to push this and food material to go down, and as a result of this enlargement, the food material is going to pass slowly. So, it takes more time to pass through, and again it is taking a resistance. That is why it is presenting with the pain in the chest, which is perceived as the patient is whenever I am swallowing, it is taking a lot of time and it is painful. Now, you see the anatomy, how complex it is. Now, looking at your sitting at this particular benches over here, unless until you are mindful, you cannot decode this level problem. But we are wanting you to solve this. So, how can we do this? Being in mindful, being in a chit chat mode, you are not going to be able to decode this, and only the mindful people and understanding the right anatomy will be able to understand these things in an anatomical basis to explain these things, why it is happening, why this left atrial chamber is making a bulge on the posteriorly. This is the first knowledge you have to know. So, otherwise it is enlargement, it is looks like moving on the left side. No, you have to know the precise location or the positions of the heart chambers. So, right atrium, right ventricle, anteriorly directed, left atrial, left ventricle, posteriorly directed. That is the basic knowledge you have to understand. Again, it apparently looks like it is a little piece of information. Oh, yeah, it is easy, yes, like that. But you have to think, you have to visualize. It is not going to stick to your brain unless you visualize the thing, and that is the thing which is happening with you. You may be studying or reading the books, but your mind is somewhere else, and again you are not being in, whatever I say, like a mindful reader, you are not going to get through this. And again, with this answer, you are not going to get the right answers. Out of 5, 0 is the commonest answer. You have scored this much. So, those who know the meaning of the dysphagia, they have said that word dysphagia, what it means. Those who have said that ventricle enlargements, whatever the pressure they have mentioned, they have 2 or 3 people have tried to explain the things with the schematic diagrams like this. Okay, that will have good explanation skills. Very few are explaining these elements of whatever you are going in. So, this knowledge of this particular anatomical basis has to be explained why in this manner and had to be explained in a way. So, whenever you are going to answer this, it is difficult, you have to take time. It is easy, but again narrating or explaining the thing, it is difficult. So, you have to explain what happens over here, why this particular enlargement is happening, that is the part. If the enlargement is happening, why it is moving on the posterior directions, and again if it is moving on the posterior directions, why this esophagus is compressed, because the relationship of these structures which is related to the posterior mediastinum, that plays a role out here. So, that is what you have to explain, and then have to explain why there is dysphagia and why there is dysphagia while you are taking the food like this. So, step by step it takes a turn to understand or explain this particular element, whenever you are going to answer this element which is known as explain why questions. Apparently looks easy, we know the fact, but again we are not going to have a full score or even near full score to this. And on the top of that, you have to give one thing for sure, that is give a schematic diagram. Whatever the way you can answer this explain why kind of questions, you have to explain it in a way. So what are the columns that you are going to explain out here? So whenever you are going to answer this about explaining why, you have to explain this normal anatomy. What is the normal anatomy? That's what you have to mention and explain. That's the thing. Now, then you have to explain what abnormal thing is happening. Abnormality, what is there that you have to mention, and why this abnormality is clinically produced like this. So this covers the answer actually, the two-liner. But if you write this two-liner explain why this clinical problem presents like this, you will be getting 1.5 out of this whole 5 question. So each segment have got 1.5 segment which is relevant to it, plus 1/2 which is left, which is the skill like schematic presentations or this particular any embryological relevance or a diagram that takes the half. So out of 5, this is how you are going to get this breakdown of the questions. If you are not going to touch each of this, the normal anatomy, what's the problem, which is abnormality we are dealing with, that means the deviations of this, that means mitral stenosis. What is mitral stenosis and what's the problem is out here is having with this mitral stenosis, the chamber enlargement, etc., etc. And why this chamber enlargement is clinically producing like this, that's the clinical justification, the third part. That's the real answer that we are mentioning. So if you are answering this real part only, excluding this abnormal anatomy and this abnormalities, you are losing this 1.5 marks and 1.5 marks already. So you are basically trying this particular question out of 2, and how much you can secure writing these things on out of 2. You will be getting 1, maximum 1.5 out of this 5. So again, knowing something, not properly explaining, you are getting 1.5 out of 5. It's far less to pass you in examination, and that is how you are losing the marks. And you are keep losing, and this small bleeders is going to lose your patience. Again, I'm not going to chase you. Do this. It's your choice. You do, you pass. You have to earn it. It's not me who is going to get the certificate, right? It's going to, you are going to get the certificate. I passed first MBBS. It's not going to be written like Dr. Subramanian Chaudhary passed first MBBS. I did that like decades ago. It's history now. So again, your MBBS, you have to earn it. We do not ask you to just like a studying and not securing the marks. You're studying clinical way. This is the clinical scenarios that is going to come over here, and what's the basis of this? This is how it can be tested in examination. And the embryology is also the same. Whenever you are asking about any embryological diseases, we are not going to ask you about the process or elaborations of this. We are going to ask about the clinical problem, the embryological context which is having, and based on that we have to explain why it is there. So undescended testes on a side, right side or left side. We ask about the diseases, what's the name of the diseases. Again, 50% have got the right name, knowing the right name. So if you do not know the disease name, how are you going to treat that? So that's the thing you have to know. You have to know the name of the disease, what you are dealing with. Then you have to know what this is, why this is happening, and where there is a trouble in here. So there is a problem when the descent of the testis in a particular way, we should have descended, which is a normal thing, and this is not descended. Could be because of this. The problem with the gubernaculum, abdominal problem, canal problem, etc., etc. That could be a problem. That could have like dealt to this particular problem over there. So again, We do not ask you to write the books. 3 words, 4 words in the right directions which have proper words, proper framing could have served the purpose. But again, you are nowhere near to it. You are just like hovering over somewhere else and you are asking questions somewhere else. So, you have to focus your study whenever you are studying it, if you are willing to study and find a proper direction. We have 2 months, 3 months left for your final examination. Anytime you can start it. Just prepare yourself. Whatever the knowledge you have gathered, acquired, frame it, place it in a simple ways. Don't read too much things. Read the thing which is relevant, and that much you can produce. That much you can produce in a relevant ways. You do not have to write each and everything which is written on the book. Again, I am selling it. Which is a relevant thing, relevant word, relevant sentence. You have to know about this particular element. Say for example, like lesser omentum. If you are given in a short note about lesser omentum, so you have to mention about the lesser omentum, where it is attached, where it is coming over here. What is the thing which is present in the lesser omentum, free margin, attached margin? What are the clinical relevance of this clinical problem and development part, like where from it is coming. So again, it's easy for me framing it in a way. So because whenever the questions I am getting, I am just like getting it in a simple forms, definitions, descriptions which is coming to it, locations which is relevant to it, and again clinical thing which is related to one clinical problem is good enough, giving a schematic diagram and relevant embryology which is related to it, 1 line or 2 sentences which is related to it, and we close the book. So that's a simple thing. Go for each and everything, whatever you know so far, framing it in this way. So descriptions which is coming beforehand, we have that like a definition, descriptions, locations, and this particular problem which is clinical relevant, and then clinical schematic picture and embryology that covers all these aspects. All right. Questions? Well, microanatomy reference is just like the large gut which you have. So it's a part of large gut. So again, that's a tricky thing which you have missed. So you will say that microanatomy large gut we haven't studied. It's a large gut histology that you have to write. How many coats are there? That's the thing. The histological of large gut, whatever you have, how many coats it has? 4 coats. What are the special feature it has? What are the layers it has? It's the same replication. It might have some kind of different special thing about this large gut, having plenty of the mucus producing cells, which is plentifully found in this particular epithelial layers, which is little bit specialized from this. Rest of this particular element is the same. So if you had said the large gut histology, it would have been easier, but as it is narrowed down into this anal canal, that makes it, oh, anal canal. If it is a rectum, you would say, oh, rectum, we haven't studied the rectum yet. But it's a which is a big part you have, it's a large gut. So you have to write the histology of the right gut and may have some special feature related to it. Now, we have mentioned this particular thing with the same question, same thing with the appendix. Say acute appendicitis, how it is produced, how this clinical things, everything. You replace with this particular bleeder thing. You replace with the acute appendicitis. The same thing. The patient's coming with you with the pain in the right right hypochondric region on pressing on this McBurney's point, it's tender and blah blah blah. And then we frame the question based on that. The organ which is likely to have this affected here, this particular anatomy, blood supply which is related to it, and the microanatomy. We just like take the word from there and place it with some different organ and switching little bit on this relevant textual region of this, and we frame the question. Same thing with the stomach, gastritis, we can place it. Same thing with the pancreas, acute pancreatitis, we can place it like this with the same clinical context. We take this particular clinical presentations in a different ways. That's it. But we will be asking the same thing, and the format of the question, whatever you are given with, when you are going to write, the same decorum you have to write, you have to follow it. You write it and finish it. So, before studying anything more, just sit there, whatever you have studied a lot, now narrow it down, make these things condense in a way, in a sequential, in a way, so that whenever you're going to have the question, you can write in sequence, this is what we are given with. Clinical problem, explain why. Say for example, I am giving another question with explain why. Carcinoma head of the pancreas produces obstructive jaundice. Explain why. Again, same. You have to explain the normal anatomy, you have to explain the abnormality, and then you have to clinically contextualize the abnormality which brings with the clinical problem, which is your answer actually, and relevant thing which is related to the schematic picture of a picture like head of the pancreas or this normal anatomy of the duodenum when it is opening, that part, that's it. And if it is relevant out here, embryology, you mention about embryology, if not, let go. So, anything related to it will be likewise that. The pattern of your answering will be same. It makes the life easy, simple. This is the basic thing. You can secure 60% marks writing one liner, two liner into this, and that makes the life easy. You will be passing. Later on, you can build on.